goodness. And I was spending the first spending the first 10 minutes just wasting time here. I was just pretty much doing what I was doing for the whole day. Focusing on my real estate stuff. I think it's a lot of time people juggle with real estate. They say, you gotta go full time. It's more difficult to go part time than when you go full time. But I feel like, it touches so much aspects of your lifestyle. For me, if I'm not careful, I feel like, the most difficult thing is the off switch. When is it the end? Especially when it comes to lead generation, prospecting. I don't like the traditional routes of those direct marketing techniques, such as making a quote unquote cold call, right? Or go out there and knock on the door. Right? Yeah, there are moments when I do want to use that type of methods to market, to prospect, to find leads, but not all the time. I'm 44. I do recognize, at this stage in my life, I do recognize, what's my strength and what's my weakness. And I no longer try to hide them. I feel like, spending like 30 plus years, working 9 to 5, working for somebody else. Now for the last 10 months as an independent contractor, as a real estate agent, as someone who's so dedicated and so passionate, yet don't get paid. Am I farting? No, unfortunately, I have no farts right now. So if you hear some noise, likely it's my skin rubbing against the tub, making a noise. Because a lot of tubs, they're not like back in the days, porcelain. These tubs, they are plastic. So when you rub against it, they will make noise. So definitely not fun. Trust me, if I drop a bomb in the water, you will hear it loudly. You're just gonna have all that sonic vibration. Possibly a nuclear submarine off the coast of Massachusetts will pick up my explosive dynamite inside the tub. So the new real estate law are forcing you to work for a company? No. The new real estate law is not forcing me to work for a new company. I'm still full time. Look, for me, the new real estate law really didn't change anything. This is I always tell people. My understanding of the new real estate law is simply put, one, it's illegal to disclose compensation on the MLS. Two, buyer and agent has to get into an agreement. As far as the seller still will be offering commission, yeah, most sellers I talk to, they still offer commission to the buyer side, because however the outcome of this settlement, right? If this case ended up going to a grand jury, having people to decide, it's gonna be a different outcome. But this has been settled, So for me, really no change. I think what's the most difficult part is still how to work my ways to prospect for leads. I've always been a black sheep. Wherever I go. Although there are darker sheeps out there who feels I'm not black enough, that I still conform to certain way of doing things. True, my core values, and that's really set me apart from a lot of people. So spending 10 months in this industry, I feel this regulation didn't change because it's already challenging. As a new agent, a lot of people might not know the statistic, but it is a 90% failure rate for new agents and entering real estate. A lot of people enter real estate with different mentality, different perspective, different dream, different hope, different goals. Some people enter real estate already with a vision board created. Right? Some people enter real estate with already a goal board. They have a set target. They know what's going on. But for some people, they simply stumbled upon this. I wouldn't say I stumbled upon this. I got laid off last summer in August. But before that layoff, I went through quite a turbulent time in a much more familiar space. I was working for a top health insurance company and spent 10 years there. It was a great time. I gotta say, about a good 6-7 years, it was a fabulous time. It was those great times, kind of like, the whole feeling of making America great again. It's like, oh, make my job great again, So by the 8th year, 9th year, 10th year, I really hope that I can go back to those good times, But things have changed, time move forward, go fast, the train have moved, without waiting for me. And so when I got terminated from that job, it was sort of in my expectance, because so much turbulence has happened. So yeah, I'll try to beat a dead horse, and unfortunately, dead horse wouldn't come back alive. So, and by August, they terminated me, and I know what I need to do. The next steps. A lot of people have said, "Hey, Pete, you should try real estate. I think you're natural. You're this and that." People talk about my extrovert qualities. People talk about you have a lot of passion, enthusiasm, and oh yes, attitude. A lot of people have said, yo, you have great attitude. I too believe in attitude a lot, I don't have a lot of mentor in any of my career, but there was one mentor I still go back to. I kept good contact with, that is my mentor, Mr. Chris Karlakis of FedEx. Right, this is a long time ago, I worked for FedEx. Before I worked for FedEx, I worked for D-Well Container Shipping. It was a Shanghainese-owned ocean freight company. This is back in like 2003, 2004. So we were on the same floor, working in Rosedale, New York. That's in Southern Queens. It's a big office building called the One Cross Island Plaza. On the 3rd floor, I worked for D-Well Container Shipping as an ocean import supervisor. And Chris Karlakis at the time, he was a district manager for FedEx Trade Networks. So we often, bump into each other in the hallway, and he's cool. The guy walked with the swag. I know nowadays the kids call this the drip, right? So, but he walked with the swag. He was older than me, He was definitely not a silent generation, but he's more like early Gen X, right? So I liked him. We clicked first time we met, and he wanted to get me into FedEx. I also wanted to move into FedEx. So I know, this back in the days, you want to, in freight forwarding at the time, you want to work yourself up to the top to reach the ceiling, because at the time the pay was really low. When I first started freight forwarding back in 2001, I worked for a Taiwanese import company. They were called Happy Cargo or Happy International, however they licensed that with. It was a Taiwanese company that did a lot of import shipments. They were a very small third party, what you call an NVOCCS, non-vessel operating carrier service, shipping service. And when I started that job, it was a full-time 9-to-5 job. It was more than 9-to-5. In freight forwarding, you got to put in a lot of time. So it was a salary-based job. I got paid, get this, $18,000 a year. $18,000 a year. But somehow I was still not qualified for Medicaid at the time, because somehow I was still too high for it. I need to be even lower for it. But I made $18,000 a year at the time, and no overtime pay. In that industry, a lot of time you have to work until the last shipment leaves. So there are specific days of the week, say Wednesday, we have export shipments. So even though I did mostly ocean imports, of course I have to know everything else, So we have a warehouse in the back. We taking shipments from customers. We put them into boxes, put on the labels, if whatever the cargo this is, right? We put them on the pallets. Then we gather documents. Exporting is the reverse of importing. We're gonna gather documents from the shipper, and that's gonna be like a description, a manifest of what's inside this package, right? We need a commercial invoice, understanding the commercial value, and then the packing list. So we need these basic things so that the Chinese customs or other countries we're exporting to are able to clear the shipment. So just like underwater fart noise. There's no underwater fart noise there, guys. Trust me. And because I have no shame in telling you that when I do an underground fart, trust me, you'll hear it. It's a big difference, This is more of me moving around inside my tub and my skin is rubbing against this colder tub, even though it's a brand new tub, nice and everything, but unlike the tub from my days, my younger days, they were porcelain. This stuff is freaking plastic, man. So I'm moving here. It's gonna make a lot of these rubbing sounds. So it's not me farting. I know you're getting excited, thinking, man, damn, yo, see that? You heard that? That's not me farting. That was actually me moving, and that's the skin on my buttocks rubbing against the bottom of the tub, making that vibration noise. Like I said before, if I fought right now, a nuclear submarine off the coast of Massachusetts will pick up this vibration, seismic disturbance, That's what's up. So, do any acne tips for boy on puberty like me? Ooh, I had acne. I had pimples, especially in my puberty days. I was also medicated. In case you're not aware, I have Tourette syndrome. I'm born with it. I was diagnosed with Tourette's when I was 12. Here it comes. If I don't remind myself, or you don't remind me that I have Tourette's, I forget about it. So now I'm talking about Tourette's, my tics come out. So I took antipsychotic from 12 until I was 20. So my chemistry was very imbalanced at the time, adding the heavy dose of medicine. So I've had my fair share of pimples, but not a lot. I'm thankfully not a lot. Doctors always said I had an issue with dry skin, right? Even though I sweat a lot. But that's also the reason why I have dry skin, because I'm prone to sweating. I sweat a lot. So all the moisture kept on losing from my glands, right? However, I had acne mostly due to stress and anxiety. Even now, 44 years old, sometimes I still have acne. It is mostly due to stress and anxiety. Just like whenever I have a canker sore, it's also from stress and anxiety, exhaustion, lack of sleep. So I would say, find yourself a balance. Also for me, if I lean on intaking too much of one thing, it may lead to more acne. So if I'm eating just all meats, you gotta be more balanced. Right? If you're eating all beef, throwing some other meats into it, right? Of course. Eat your veggies, eat your fruits and vegetables. Definitely get enough sleep. As kids, we still grow and we're still developing, right? So nothing's set in stone yet. So we're still going through the steps. So it's important for us to keep yourself nourished and definitely find a balance. Don't tire yourself out, man. Don't exhaust yourself, because when you exhaust yourself, your body get into the defense mode. When your body get into the defense mode, you start attacking a lot of organic materials within you, whether it's good or bad, but that can cause a lot of friction going on and leading to more emission of fluids, So that's why I said, just try to be cool, be balanced, have a balanced meal, and definitely get a lot of rest. I didn't do a lot of skin products, thankfully. I used to use just mainly soap on my skin, but uh, I think skin is ours, it's very personal. So even though the commercial make it look like it's magical, or your friends, influencers said this product is great, but definitely look for something that fits your skin, and then use it, because a lot of these products don't work first time or second time. They'll work on you after you give it a good lengthy time. So your body have to get used to it. Similarly, you want to jump into another product, you also have to give some time to wax and wane. So just like the medication we take, it can't just forcefully come off. Because I did forcefully come off. When I was 20 years old, I felt, my Tourette syndrome, it has been pretty much controlled. When I first started taking antipsychotic at 12 years old, my tics were far more severe than now. You may have seen people on TV, on YouTube, showing their Tourette sides. You have seen people making all types of movement, saying all kinds of stuff, all kind of phrases, not just profanities, but all kind of things. As a long-time Tourette syndrome advocate, I also have my own podcast. I talk to a lot of people, been interviewed on podcasts. So it's a diverse, colorful world out there. So going back to before, I was saying, I'm a real estate professional. I'm always a black sheep because I'm one of the few Tourette syndrome real estate agent out there. Tourette syndrome is not just a tic. I always say this. I didn't realize this segment gonna turn to Tourette thing, but Tourette is something that I'm the most comfortable to talk about because I know it, I have it. Yet the world have still a lot of questions, still a lot of misunderstandings. So I always feel the Tourette talk is very important. This very channel, before it became Long Island Vibes, it has always been Fabulously Tourette, which similarly you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, and TikTok. Fabulously, that's me. I'm always fabulous, and I have Tourette syndrome, right? That's unescapable. So, yeah, I tried to stop the medication at 20 years old, right? The reason why was that those most violent tics, the most shocking tics, were all gone. Right? Again, Tourette is not just the tics. The tics is the tip of the iceberg. There is such thing as a Tourette iceberg, as a diagram to show you a better understanding of what Tourette syndrome as a whole Tourette syndrome is. And tic is the physical manifestation of Tourette syndrome, and you see that at the peak of the iceberg. But what's underneath are the spectrums, right? Because the Tourette syndrome is foremost is a spectrum disorder. And there's the left side, there's the right side, kind of like politics, think of the left wing and the right wing, but here you have mental health conditions and symptoms riding on these waves. Very common for people with Tourette syndrome to have a combination of two things. One is obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, and the other one is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Of course, back in those days, the doctor used to call it ADD, and ADHD is what we know now. And OCD and ADHD is very much is very much the spirit element, the energy of Tourette syndrome. And Tourette syndrome, to me, a long time survivor. I always say I'm a Tourette guy for a long time. I always feel the Tourette, the tics, are the physical manifestation of ADHD and OCD, and the very feeling, the very urge, the very the drive, the energy. Why you want to do it. It's all there. It's quite a compulsion. I have in recent years, 2-3 years ago, I was misdiagnosed for having bipolar 1, and then diagnosed me again for bipolar 2. And the doctor didn't know what's going on. I can tell that she's very much into prescribing me a new type of medication. It was another antipsychotic. It was a much a better form. It's a third generation, but it is still an antipsychotic. So going back to the first medication I took, that antipsychotic was very infamous, but a lot of people now still take it. It was ORAP, Pimazide. Okay, it was mainly used to treat patients with schizophrenia. But somehow, leading scientists, researchers, especially with Dr. Shapiro from New York, he realized that by using antipsychotic like ORAP is able to help suppress tic manifestations. And so since the 70s, the Tourette sector started experimenting with these medicines, especially like ORAP. As a matter of fact, from what I have learned, ORAP nearly got phased out. Right? I forgot which company produced ORAP. Maybe it's Pfizer. Almost got phased out because there was a new generation of antipsychotic that does a better job than ORAP. But because this first generation ORAP contained important chemistry that really helps suppress Tourette syndrome, the Tourette Association of America at the time was still rather young. Then they and other people leading the movement gathered all the existing Tourette syndrome people, got them all together, and they went to Washington D.C. to petition in Congress, hence creating a new legislation, a new law that basically helped compensate pharmaceutical company to continue to produce items that is aimed to be phased out. So basically, asking them to produce at a loss because the government will reimburse them, because these medications, even though no longer being used for its main objective, but is being used by a fringe population, people who have Tourette's at the time. So this is something very interesting from the history of Tourette's going back. I learned this fact from the book Twitch and Shout. It also became a movie in the 90s. There are a lot of famous people who have Tourette syndrome, whether it's actors, artists, writers. So there are a lot of books out there. I myself wrote a bunch of articles in the past. You can perhaps look me up. But as you can tell, I have a lot of passion to talk about Tourette's. And somehow my top live stream got us into this particular conversation, which I like. We're 22 minutes into it, and I like it. I'm having a salt bath right now, right? Because the salt, and it's a magnesium salt bath, because magnesium is known to carry a sedative, calming element. So I'm just staying here, I'm chilling, I'm just enjoying this. Now going back again to what I talked about, at 20 years old, I decided to get off the medication, right? Because even though the antipsychotic ORAP helped control a lot of my tics, including my outbursts at the time, I remember I always like to repeat, "Fuck you, bitch," right? "Fuck you, bitch." And it was this urge, like, fuck, I want to bite my tongue, I don't want to say it, because you can't walk around and say "fuck you, bitch" all the time. But this is the corporalia, we call it. Corporalia is a very small portion of the total Tourette syndrome experience, but it catches the most media negative attraction, because this is where people will feel, oh, you have Tourette's, therefore you have a problem with outbursting profanity. In fact, only a fringe, I think 2 to 3% of people who have Tourette's who exhibit this, right? Yet this have a profound negative impact in media in how people view Tourette syndrome. So I'm telling you, I developed corporalia not because I have Tourette syndrome, but I developed corporalia because I started taking a medication. The antipsychotic, ORAP, for a lot of people in the community, they know that this medication carry a lot of negativity around it, because he has quite a list of side effects that's rather detrimental. So for me, it produced a lot of mental health side effect for me that's at this point is irreversible. Part of the reason why I was misdiagnosed for having bipolar is because after I started taking this medication, that's when I started to feel this manic depression like symptoms. So, when I was 12, and in the morning, I can feel, we all get energized, we get a sugar rush, whatever. But I get this, I'm in a euphoric stage, right? In morning periods. And then after lunch, it just crash to depression. And, so this was going on. Of course, and I try to, tell my mom about how I feel, but she just feel that I'm being weak. I'm being weak-minded, right? I let myself, right? I'm unable. I'm someone who cannot control his thoughts, right? I'm letting my thoughts drive me insane. So she feel that, I have mood swing. It's because I'm weak, right? So I need to be more like her, to learn to be strong-minded, so I can control these impulses, right? So I attempt to control these impulses, right? So and then I started hearing voices. And they're not exactly voices. They're like basically my mother's voices, telling myself that, yo, stop thinking that way. You're a loser. You're a fucking loser, right? Right? This is what you do, right? You're weak. That's why you have these thoughts, right? Because kids are playing with basketballs, having a good time, and I'm afraid to join them, right? All the negativities, what if, what that, what if, and I started to play these different scenarios in front of my heads, 20, 30 scenarios. You ever watch, damn, what's that movie? I just saw it recently, the part two, right? The animated series talking about emotions. What's that movie called? The anxiety is able to produce all these thoughts. You get into self-sabotaging modes, that was me. But at the same time, I'm forcing myself to say, hey, I gotta have a strong mind. My mom told me that I gotta have a strong mind. And so I'm still hearing these voices telling me, you're weak, you're weak, you're weak. So every day, as a junior high school kid, 7th grade, since taking this medication, even though the medication calm a lot of tics, but it produce more tics like cropolalia, like cursing tics. But at the same time, mentally, what's inside, I was becoming darker and darker. So I developed this pattern of basically understanding that I have this mood swing going on up and down. I also understand that everybody have mood swings. Everybody have good day and bad day, and I just need to be strong minded. And so I'll be okay. But it's not okay. So eventually these voices just get louder and louder. The only way to stop them, I can't manifest them. A lot of time it's just a negative thoughts, or something happens, it manifests. A lot of time it's always like a triggering moment for me. Something happens, someone says something that trigger my self-esteem issues. As soon as it becomes self-aware, that's when all this voice starts. So people say, yo man, you gotta be more self-aware, but those days I try not to be self-aware, because I know once I become self-aware, that's when those voices will start to come out. All right, so the only way as a teenager to stop these noises and voices is for me to go to sleep, right? So I have to take naps. So a lot of time in school, the voices started, by the afternoon, interrupting my focus and concentration. On top, I'm getting bullied every day for having Tourette's. And then when I go home, my mother don't believe in my mental health battle. But when she sees that this medication is helping him, his medication has put away those terrible, painful, violent tics that she don't wish to see her son to have. And plus, she also feels just embarrassed, that he's doing this kind of stuff. But the mental health problems, just out of the door, because to her, she was old school. My mom was old school. She was a beautiful woman, very powerful. At the time, she work in the aeronautics industry. It was a man-dominated industry. Just like when she entered real estate in the early 90s, it was a man-dominated industry. But mom always felt that even though she's immigrant, she's Chinese, but she felt she's equal to this white man, if not more than them. That's how she felt. So I always know that I grew up with narcissistic parents, but they didn't become like that just because they're born that way. You gotta mind you, they themselves went through tremendous amount of trauma and carried tremendous amount of generational trauma through their parents. Those days were hard. You look at China. China, October 1st, 2024, they just celebrated their 75th year anniversary after forming the People's Republic of China. Prior to that, it was the Sino-Japanese War, and prior to that, it was Civil War. On top, negative influence coming from all the colonizing nations out there, imperial power, and prior to that, 100 years back, before 1911, it was a feudal monarchy, just like the rest of the world were all feudal monarchy, right? It was the European industrialization that turned the production mechanism from feudalism into capitalism, right? But around that period of time, workers also saw the imbalance in the distribution of wealth brought on by capitalism. Hence, they riot, they revolt against the greed brought upon through capitalism that reminded them of the same anger, same imbalance from the feudal days when there was a class difference between the serfs and the lords. Okay, hence, sound-minded philosophers like Karl Marx, started creating new philosophy like socialism, which at the time a lot of smaller country, oppressed country that tried to break themselves away from colonization, or countries that still in a weak influence imperialism, feudalism, and try to break away to see the new lights. That's what happened with China at the time. Not long ago, China was feudal monarchy that goes back 4,000, 5,000 years, man. That's a long ass time. And during my mom's days, when she was in her early teens, she experienced some of the worst trauma can ever inflict upon a child. She has to live through the Cultural Revolution. In my mom's own account, was she remembered before the revolution happened, it was still a normal day in class. She was in junior high school, probably like 8th grade. And the day of the revolution started, she just remembers suddenly the class stopped, right? The class was stormed by not adults, communist revolution people, but kids, fellow classmates from next door. And these kids got organized. They stormed the classroom. They stopped the lesson, stopped the session. My mom said her beloved teacher, the most respected teacher, was harassed and taunted in class by these kids. They're all classmates, but they were immediately turned into factions. Some kids were with the revolution, some not, but in the end, you all gotta be with the revolution because there is no bipartisanship. It's either your way or the Long Island Expressway. So my mother said, I remember she told me that the teacher was taunted, spit on in class. And one kid had an idea of poking the teacher with a needle. So it's horrendous thing she saw, but these were at the hands of other children doing this, right? Influenced by one or two individuals who are adults, but who's sending out this disinformation, misinformation, and they were misguiding the youth. Sounds familiar, right? This can happen really anywhere, right? Anytime in history, if you look at it, and many revolution were meaningful. Many revolutions were meaningful, right? But there are also many revolutions were not meaningful. They are seen as a dark point. Cultural revolution, and we're seen as a dark point for China for a long time. They don't want to talk about it, but more and more now these days, I do see things are coming out. But still, it's a dark moment. People don't want to talk about it. On top, there's a lot of misconception, misunderstanding. My father also went through those days because China always had a class struggle. My mother was born from her parents were originally farmers. When their farmlands were invaded by the Japanese army, they in turn fled, and they either flee, get captured, or they can get organized. So they got organized. They joined the early days. Those were the Red Army. There's a precursor to the PLA, People's Liberation Army, the Red Army, led by Mao. At the time of Mao, it was just one of the faction leaders. He's still slowly rising up the ranks. So that's what happened to my mother's parents. They were all farmers who lost their farmlands, and they become soldiers to survive. On my father's side, it was different. My father's father, my grandfather, was from Wenzhou province. His family were tea merchants, and tea merchants going back generations, having to be on the Silk Road trading teas with the West, with Europe. So they had the money to send their children to school. So that's my grandfather went to school, educated. Both my grandfather and grandmother from my father's side, they were all renowned writers, poets, translators. My grandmother, her family was what you call aristocrat, and also going back to the feudal kingdoms, there were definitely people who worked in the government officials. So they had a much higher class. So my grandmother's father, he was one of the founding member of China Bank at the time. So she grew up in a wealthy family, but it was also a time of a downfall in the family, with the head of the household, the father, passing. On top, her city, Tianjin, is a port city, which is just like Shanghai at the time. In the early republic days, the local government were very corrupt, very money hungry, and a lot of people still want to have a dream of returning back into feudal monarchy. So people who have power wanted to reverse. They'll even mingle with foreigners. In this case, Japan imperialists. They were eyeing China for a while already, having to colonize the Korean peninsula at the time. They were on board together with other industrial giants of the time, and so the port city of Tianjin, just like Shanghai, was carved up into many sections, lease zones, rented to different countries. And U.S. had a share also renting there. So my grandmother was brought up within, I believe, the American lease zone. So she received a lot of higher educations, having to go to YWCA. Her brother was educated at Oxford. And when the war happened, China wanted to be able to preserve the educated elites, making sure the knowledge is saved. So when the war is over, these people can come out and lead the new nation coming out of the ashes. So that's really was their plan. So all the students from top colleges, they all closed their door, but they all moved to Kunming in southwest China, in the province. They formed a temporary university called the Xinan Lianda, which is the Southwestern United College. It was a college put together by all the colleges within China at the time, to helping to continue to educate scholars during wartime China, and in hope that when the war is over, these scholars are able to help rebuild a nation, right? And hence they did. They did, in fact. So going further to Cultural Revolution. So despite this fact that my grandmother and grandfather, they are from different class, but they're all devoted for the country's well-being. Not to mention my grandfather were founded a poetry club in junior high school. In high school, a poetry club having young poets and talk passionately about their nation, discuss the Japanese invasion at the time and understanding what's happening. And it was a very patriotic, poetic club he formed. And my grandmother wrote for underground newspaper, and she criticized against Japanese imperialism at the time, and to a point that the imperialist spies, right, wanted to hunt her down and arrest her, probably even murder her for spreading rebellious information, right, and telling people the truth. So, despite all this, in the revolution, it's a very biased way of looking at things, very polarized. So there's really no sense of fairness, no justice. Even though these kids are supposedly revolting for a socialist revolution, but in actuality, this only enrich some elites, which really have no benefit to the whole public. So it was a mess. It was chaos. So both paternal and maternal side family, they were all tortured. And how you respond to torture is entirely how you are built. My mom at 13 years old stood ground every single day watching her parents getting beat, getting humiliated, getting spit on, right? In her own neighbor, in her own courtyard. She stood there hoping that they would take it easier on her parents, right? But no, they didn't take it easy. These fucking people are sick. Also, these are all teenagers. A lot of these are all red guards were all her age kids, 13, 14. Their minds were brainwashed by the disinformation coming through a few elites from the government and doing this. So she's just watching her parents getting beat, getting tortured. So my grandmother become crippled ever since then. Both of them became handicapped, right? My paternal side, they were also locked up, books were burned, they were publicly humiliated. But my grandmother tended to be very positive minded, which is also the reason why she was the last to survive that generation. She passed away 2 years ago, 103 years old. 103 years old, mind you. She didn't use any health products. In fact, her lifestyle, the way she liked to eat her sweets, is very unhealthy for her age. But it's longevity. This is our body. A good gene is a good gene, right? So long story short, my parents, I grew up with narcissistic parents, in fact, but they didn't become overnight narcissists. They were fortunately forged by society, forged by the living conditions. So they have to navigate using their own perspective, whether they did it intentionally, unintentionally, but definitely changed them, right? So anyway, I realized I've been here for like over 45 minutes. I need to come out. I will continue this. So this is where I left off. We haven't gone anywhere yet. I have yet talked about the gist of the antipsychotic side effects. I haven't talked about the true danger of coming off antipsychotic. I took it for 8 years, and I didn't wax and wane. I didn't slowly cut down. I just did it overnight. Very dangerous. I would love to share you with those experiences as well. So I hope you can tune into this live stream, story time, sharing with you my Tourette journey. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. If you wish to hear some other topics, anything from Tourette's to Long Island Vibes, Sight Sounds Flavor, Long Island 2, yes, real estate, feel free to drop a comment and let me know, and I'd love to produce something in the future. Again, thank you for watching. I'm Peter Zhao, licensed real estate agent. Many contents like this on this channel. The channel has always been a Tourette channel for a long time. I turned into real estate, but as you can see, my core is still with Tourette syndrome. I love to advocate that. Plus, I love to tell stories. You can find me on all the Meta apps under the same alias, Fabulous Tourette. I have a podcast on Spotify, Fabulous Tourette Radio, and TikTok. I'm on there also with the same alias. Again, thank you for watching. Definitely hit the subscribe button. All right, and yeah, you have a beautiful day. And take care. Have a good night. Ooh, I gotta be careful when I come out, you know. Oh man, let's see here. All right, here we go. Oh yeah.